Big news! OpenAI just released a brand new version of GPT-5. It's called GPT-5 Codex, and it is for use specifically with the Codex agentic coding system. It can be used in the CLI or the IDE version of Codex. Let's jump right into some of the highlights. Introducing upgrades to Codex. All right, so they've announced a brand new version of GPT-5 called GPT-5 Codex, a version of GPT-5 optimized for agentic coding in Codex. One of the things they have trained this to do specifically is to be like a code review agent. If you have a PR or a specific feature that you're working on, this version of Codex is trained to review the code, make sure there's no major bugs in it, and also to verify that the change that was requested has been implemented. One of the things they specifically call out, in addition to being able to build a full project from scratch, just like you would expect, it can also perform large-scale refactors. So if you have an existing code base and you need to make a massive overhaul change, they have worked to make sure that this is highly performative in that space. One of the more intriguing features of GPT-5 Codex is that they say it is now adapts how much time it spends thinking dynamically based on the input. So if you're asking for just a really simple little task, maybe changing a color of a button, it's going to return very quickly and use far fewer tokens. Conversely, if you're asking for something more complicated, it's going to take a lot longer, but put more effort and more thinking ability into the task. And they are actually reporting that of the OpenAI employee traffic that they see, all of their employees using this coding tool, the bottom 10% of user requests are using 93.7% fewer tokens than GPT-5. That is a huge decrease in cost. Conversely, for the top 10%, GPT-5 Codex thinks more, spending twice as long reasoning, editing, and testing code. And they provide us a nice little graph to show that off. This is great because if you've ever asked an AI system to just do something real quickly and it goes off and you see this huge list of thinking and spinning and churning, and you're kind of thinking, oh, my little precious tokens are going to waste. If this is right, they have figured out how to balance that. Because, the bottom half, the easiest requests that we're prompting, we really don't need it to think that hard. We kind of just need it to go off and work. But by the same token, that upper 10%, that really heavy load where we really are asking it to go think and put a lot of thought and do this correctly, that is where we want our tokens to be spent. They're showing that GPT-5 Codex has doubled the number of tokens compared to GPT-5. That's a big improvement. So GPT-5 Codex, just like GPT-5, has levels of reasoning. You can request low, medium, or high, and that's the level of thinking that it's going to put in. If you're looking for the benchmarks, they've got the SWE-bench benchmarks right here for you. And you do see a slight improvement for GPT-5 Codex High versus GPT-5 High. But the real strength comes in where they mentioned that refactoring is a real strength of this model. The GPT-5 Codex on High is way better than GPT-5 High old model. So you can see they've really made a massive improvement for refactoring. They've also mentioned again that GPT-5 Codex has been trained specifically for conducting code reviews and finding critical flaws. So this means that second set of eyes on the code, it's going to go back over and not just validate that the code works, but also validate that there aren't any major bugs in it, and also that the code is really optimized to do what it's supposed to do, not just do what it's supposed to do and we don't care about whatever else is in there. I think what they're saying is that this is really trying to narrow in to make sure that your code is solid and doesn't have a bunch of extraneous fluff or worse, major flaws. Additionally, they've enhanced it to make sure that the comments put in by GPT-5 Codex are less likely to be incorrect or unimportant. I like less likely to be incorrect. I think incorrect comments are actually worse than no comments. This next one I find very interesting. GPT-5 Codex is a reliable partner on front-end tasks. It shows significant improvements in human preference evaluations, when creating mobile websites. And when working in the cloud, it can look at images or screenshots you provide as input, visually inspect its progress, and display screenshots of its work to you. All right, so they go on to mention some specific updates they've made in both the CLI and the IDE space. In the CLI, they've rebuilt Codex CLI around agentic coding workflows to make it a more capable and reliable partner. You can now attach and share images, screenshots, wireframes, and diagrams right in the CLI to build shared context. I thought you could already do this, so maybe not, and maybe this is either new or enhanced. Either way, that is tremendously helpful because sometimes a screenshot of what you're working on is the best way to get your point across. Codex now tracks progress with a to-do list and includes tools like web search and MCP for connecting to external systems. This one I think is great. Approval modes are simplified to 3 levels: read-only with explicit approvals, auto with full workspace access, but requiring approvals outside of the workspace, or full access with the ability to read files anywhere and run commands with network access. So to me, this kind of simplifies some of the auto accept. You can now kind of just let it go crazy within the directory that you're working on. If it needs to reach outside of that directory, it's still going to ask for approval. To me, this is kind of the happy medium that I've been looking for. I'm always a little nervous to run things in dangerous permission or full YOLO mode because I'm not exactly sure. Sometimes I might ask for something that I don't understand what I'm asking for. I'm always a little nervous about what it might go off and do. So I love that it's got a mostly free reign, except when it's going outside of what I think are the expected boundaries. All right, and a couple of IDE updates. When you use Codex in your IDE, you can write shorter prompts and get faster results because Codex can use context like the files you've opened or the code you've selected. That one is intriguing. I need to try that one out. This is another one I'm kind of interested in. Like in the CLI and IDE extensions, you can now use images to share front-end design specs or explain UI bugs. Again, that's great. A picture is worth 1,000 words. But as it builds for you, Codex can spin up its own browser, look at what it built, iterate, and attach a screenshot of the results to the task in GitHub PR. This is similar to something I've just started doing by using a Playwright MCP server, asking it to run the tests and take a screenshot of the results and then feed that back into the agent to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. If it can now do that natively on its own, that's pretty interesting. And of course, pricing and availability. Codex is included with ChatGPT Plus, Pro, Business, EDU, and Enterprise plans. Plus, EDU and Business seats can cover a few focused coding sessions each week, while Pro can support a full work week across multiple projects. So ChatGPT Plus is the $20 a month plan. That's what I have. And that's probably what a lot of casual users have. So they're saying that can cover a few focused coding sessions each week. I will be curious to see what that means in the coming days ahead to see just how generous that is. In the past, I have not had any issues with it, so I don't expect I'll run into problems, but I am just curious to see what will be available there. Pro users, that I think is the $200 a month plan, can support a full work week across multiple projects, as you would expect. If you're paying for that level of subscription, I would expect you'd be able to do quite a few projects on this. Beyond that, the business and enterprise plans, of course, they generally have a credit pool that you can buy or is shared amongst your users. And finally, if you are using Codex CLI just with the API key, that will be rolling out soon. All right, so to use this new upgraded model, you can go out to the Codex GitHub repo and install it, or if you want to make sure that you have the latest update, just go look for version 36. Make sure you have what, as of this filming, is the most current model. And then once you've got it installed, you can just fire it up by typing Codex. And I'm going to allow it to work without asking for approval. All right, so I'm coming in here and it is still running GPT-5 medium by default. I want to update that. So I'm going to type the /model command. And then you see here, you've got the new GPT-5 Codex options. low, medium, and high. So GPT-5 Codex Medium is what they would be running as default. So I'm just going to go ahead and run that as well. All right, and we are in the Codex model. You can also run it in the IDE. I use Cursor. If you don't already have the Codex extension installed, you can just go to extensions and look for Codex. I do already have this installed, so I don't need to install it again. All I need to do is just click the little Open Codex button, and it will open Codex in my IDE. All right, so you can see down here, it is running GPT-5 Codex Medium by default. You still have access to the other GPT-5 models, but obviously I want to use GPT-5 Codex right now. Okay, so the application I'm working with today is just a simple little tic-tac-toe game, just with silly little emojis. So one of the things they mentioned in the announcement was context awareness within the IDE. So I was really curious to see how that works. So I opened up the CSS file. I highlighted the emojis that are currently being used in the tic-tac-toe game, and I just asked, can we change these emojis? It didn't have a previous reference. We weren't chatting about the emojis. The previous interaction had been about dark and light mode. So I just highlighted that code, said, can we change these emojis? And it says, sure, happy to update them. Which emoji would you like to use for player 1 and player 2? So let's say, how about the pizza emoji and the emoji of the person making an X symbol with their arms? No idea if that's going to work. Working, editing, thinking, one file changed, testing. Oh, I saw it run in the background. It's definitely flashing. Updating test comments for clarity. That's kind of awesome. Updating code comment. All right, and it says it has swapped the emojis. Let's take a look. Oh, nice. Pizza, X, pizza. All right, so I would say that context awareness, that worked really well. So I wanted to give the terminal version of Codex a fair shake as well. So I gave it a screenshot of the current tic-tac-toe game. I said, this is what the project currently looks like. Can you mock up 3 updates to the game to give it a more modern look? Now, I was expecting it would give me 3 potential changes, like maybe 3 different colored boards or new emojis or something, but it went through and thought about it, and it came up with 3 specific changes to the current game board, which I definitely appreciated. You can see it still spent quite a bit of time thinking and explaining what it was going to do. I would say this is still a little bit on the verbose side, but not frustratingly so. And it is very clear every step along the way what it was doing, why it was thinking about doing that, and what it was checking against the current code base to make sure it was allowed to make that change, and also that it was allowed to make the change within the directory. In other words, that it wasn't reaching outside of its bounds in order to change something or run something. So that was nice to see. Time to run some tests, and it's completed its changes. So what do they look like? Nice. We've got a dark and a light mode, and we've got a little animation when players win. Nice work. So just a couple of other quick things to note. You might have seen this already, but if you're used to using Claude Code and using it in planning mode, it is nice to note that down here on the drop-down for agent, one of the things you can do is hit chat or plan in the IDE, and then that turns it into effectively planning mode. You can have a conversation with it and it won't just run off and start coding. And then over here in the terminal, in the command line interface, the way that they want you to do that is to use the /approvals command and put it into read only. So now it's like you're just in a chat system, and if you ask it to do something, it will go off and make a plan, and it'll come back and ask you, do you want me to implement this? And then you can say yes, and then it is effectively in approval mode. So every step it's going to take, you have to say, yes, you're allowed to do that. Yes, you're allowed to do that. Or you can go back into the /approvals and set it back to auto mode. The other thing that I really appreciated down here in the terminal was there is this running count of the number of tokens used. So in my session, I hit not quite 23,000. Now, obviously, I don't know where the limits are or if there's a daily limit, an hourly limit, if they reset. I'm not sure of any of that yet, but it is nice to be able to keep an eye on that in real time so that once I kind of figure out where that limit might be, I can kind of see where I'm at. So that was just kind of a nice touch, I think. The other thing you can do is run the /status command, and it will show you your token usage over here. I did try running that in Cursor, but there does not seem to be a /status command available. So unless I'm missing something, I don't see that same token count anywhere in the IDE. So if anybody else knows how or where to find that, please let me know in the comments. All right, so that was our quick overview of some of the most recent changes in Codex CLI. I will definitely be playing with it over the next couple of days to see what stands out and what the best changes are. All right, I hope that helped. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.